welcome back to another week of knitting progress. I've had a fantastic week of knitting this week and managed to get a huge chunk of that front left panel knitted. I'm almost at the point where I need to start shaping it in for the armhole. Obviously I need to make this the same length from armhole to hem as my back panel is from armhole to hem, because those two seams are going to join up. Where are we? I've got my back panel with me. So there's my back panel and here's my front left piece. So they're both going to join here along this gap. So from this point here where I start shaping for the armhole, I'll start shaping for the armhole on my front panel as well. So they both need to be the same length. I'm still a tiny bit shorter. So as well as measuring it up against the back panel to make sure they're both the same length, I'm actually counting the pattern. I've got this little plaiting looking cable pattern going on, so I've been counting from the hem where it starts up to where I've reached in my knitting, and this one's got 24 of these little plaits going on, cables. They look like a little girl's hair plaited, and I've actually got 25 of these little cable plaits on the back panel just before it starts doing this reduction. So I've got one more of those to do, and this is ready to start doing that armhole reduction. Now because it's a front panel, it's been a lot faster because it's not as wide as the back was. There are less stitches per row, so I've been able to really march ahead with it. And another major benefit this week, I couldn't get to work yesterday. It was freezing outside, literally -3. We very rarely get that cold here. The roads are a sheet of ice. It had rained the afternoon before and then we froze down to -3 overnight. It's lethal out there. There was no way I could get to work. I did make 2 attempts. I eyed it up first thing in the morning, spent 10 minutes de-icing the car, drove about 3 yards out onto the road and decided, no, this is crazy. So I reversed back into my parking space and came back into the warm. Once the sun got out and things started thawing and melting and the trees were dripping, I decided to try again. Maybe I could at least get half a day's work done. No chance. Anything that was still in the shade and not catching the sun was still just as lethal as it had been. And it's going to freeze again tonight, so I don't think I'll be going anywhere tomorrow either. So I got a whole half a day's knitting done yesterday that normally I wouldn't, which is what's put me well ahead. It's been lovely. So although I couldn't get to work, I did make good use of my time. So I've had a great week. And that's kind of it. Not much to report this week. Made big progress on my front panel. Now this is the front panel that's going to have the buttons on it. The next front panel will be a little bit harder because I have to incorporate buttonholes. And I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. I'm sure the pattern will explain when I get to that stage. The buttonholes on the jumper I'm wearing is actually, the buttonhole bit is a different strip of knitting, and when I knitted the buttonholes, my needles were sitting that way across the loop, and I've got a buttonhole here and a buttonhole here and somewhere in the middle, there we go, cut my finger in there. So buttonholes along this strip that were knitted with my knitting needle facing along that way. But this jumper I'm doing now, I'm knitting, the buttonhole piece is knitted into the jumper, not stitched on afterwards. So I'm going to have to do the buttonholes using a different method. I don't know what that is yet. We'll worry about that when we get to it. So that's it for this week. Hopefully a pretty quick update. Back panel looks exactly the same. I have slipped it onto a spare needle of a different size that this pattern doesn't actually need, and started on my front panel. So I'll see you next week for another knitting update, and hopefully by then I should have at least finished the reduction in this sleeve. And as it should go faster as the sleeve gets narrower, well, not the sleeve, this isn't a sleeve, as the back, it's not a back panel either, as this front panel gets narrower where it reduces for the armhole, each row should get quicker. So hopefully this should go pretty fast and I'll at least finish it in the week, though I won't have a frozen icy day at home when I can be knitting. You never know, perhaps we'll get snowed in. We shall see. It's very jolly cold out there right now. I'm glad to be snuggled up indoors. So bye for now, and we'll catch up with you next week.